It's sort of like a hi and goodbye kind of thing. Jill and I are back for like a couple days, and then we're off again.
We'll be back next week.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of things to announce, and then we'll. I think Titus wants you to wait until later to get the prayer request. Anyway, the food shower is going. You guys are doing a good job. I haven't talked to Pastor yet about the recipients, but keep it up. This is something we do. Everyone can get involved in it. You guys can get involved in it. Take your allowance or take your grass cutting money or whatever in the world you have. Get money for beating up your brothers or whatever you do, however you do it. Or let your sisters.
Hey, some of them were bragging how much candy they've already gotten from Halloween. I told them take some of it and put it in Ziploc.
There you go.
Take 4 Ziploc bags and bring it in.
Yeah, don't take the ones you don't like or ones you've taken a bite of and try it around. That's all right. Anyway, I mean, this is stuff that everybody in the family can do. Parents, if you help your kids with this, it really teaches them that it is more blessed to give than to receive. And it's stuff that they can do. And this is over and above tithes and offerings. You should be teaching that to your kids right from the beginning. It's an excellent lesson and it produces good habits. So, food shower's coming up. Work day Saturday, 8 to noon. Is there a sign-up sheet? We're going to be...
No, there's no sign-up sheet. They're going to...
Yeah. Joe and I are going to be doing some stuff apart from that because we just aren't here. We're going to be down in Arizona. But if you would remember that, I'm sure that those that come out would appreciate help. And then maybe one that comes out and you can do it. What's going on this Sunday? Is something happening this Sunday?
Clock adjustment.
Oh, clock adjustment. Gary, is something happening this Sunday?
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Anyway, it's good. We've been at conferences and it's been good. It's been really good. It's been really busy. Hey, pray for Joe and I. We're sort of ready for this month. It's been a lot. Anyway, good. How's school? Kennedy? Straight A's?
Almost. It was for a little bit, and it was making me really upset that I dropped out. But it's fine, we're working on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a B+. I'm like right on the edge. It's literally an 89.9.
I'm sure that Hannah's straight A's.
At the end.
At the end, okay. Because Kessie is like A+, I'm sure of that. And the boys, I'm sure they're like off the charts. They're like 4.2s, right? Look at them.
Here's the heavenly.
Things to pray. Yeah, things to pray about. Okay, I'll stop with that. We'll take your prayer requests at the end, okay? So I'll sort of watch the clock. Whatever happened that they moved the clock over there instead of there? I don't know what happened. Tim, did you do that? I don't know who did that. Okay.
I'll be there next week.
Well, that will do me a lot of good. Anyway. Okay. Book of Ruth. Judges is ending up with, so you're getting 2 stories basically right at the end, 2 prolonged stories. And I really didn't want to go into them because they're pretty, the application would be the pits. One is where the tribe of Benjamin is almost wiped out. And they had to do some, basically the tribes of Israel got together to preserve Benjamin because Benjamin was so corrupt and so wicked. They did some things that the whole of Israel ganged up against them and were going to wipe them out and annihilate them. So that, if you want to read some gory stuff, you can read that. The other part was about a Levite that was traveling and ended up in a man's home. The man was not fast, and he had idols, and then he wanted a Levite. And it ended up that as he was traveling, That's not true. That was the Benjamin thing. Levi was traveling with his concubine. She left him and did him wrong. He goes after her, catches up with her at her father's place, and then is taking her home. And en route, they end up in Benjamin, and just some real vile things happen. And it ends up that he calls Israel to purge some gross immorality and ungodliness. The way he did it was not something I really wanted to go into. So, we're in Judges, and I prefer, read it if you want. Read it. Well, read it. It's in the Bible, so please do.
So you Ruth?
We're going to read. So it's right after Judges. So that's how Judges ends. And matter of fact, the last verse, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. You've heard that once or twice before through the book of Judges, right? And I'll tell you what, folks, we aren't far from that. We really are not far from that. So, anyway, picking up the book of Ruth. I wanted to give you an overview today, and basically, excuse me, I have a tickle. This will introduce the book of Ruth to us, and I'll continue on with it. It's a great book of the Bible, probably one of the best Old Testament books to show redemption, to show the hand of God in the background, to show what God can do, and the beckoning or inclusion of all. Ruth was a Moabite, and she's welcomed in. As the book progresses, it's built around her. Just a wonderful story. It's almost in direct contrast to the book of Judges, although it takes place in the day of Judges. So let's pray together. We'll get into the book of Ruth. It'll be Ruth, the introduction, and I'll show you a couple things in here. Maybe you'll show me a couple things in here, and that's okay. And if you have a phone, turn it off, please. And I will be... I don't have a phone. Good. The smartest thing I did all day.
Sure.
I thought I put it in here.
Probably out in the car.
Oh yeah, I don't care. So anyway, let's pray. Father, thank you very much for time that we can spend together. We are looking at some of the great accounts in the scriptures, especially the Old Testament. For some, it's been a long time since they've gone through it. For others, it's very fresh. For still others, they know nothing about it, and we want to spend some time in showing and teaching this. So, as we get into the book of Ruth, give us a good platform. We'll thank you for it in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, so the book of Ruth. It starts out with a man named Elimelech and his wife Naomi and their 2 sons. I wrote just by introduction, perhaps as no other book in the Bible shows, the depravity and disregard of God is shown in the book of Judges. Even as the book ends with the epitaph, it sounds clear that in those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did that which was right in his own eyes. But Ruth is like, I put down, but even as a cool breeze comforts the weary soul, so the book of Ruth comforts the reader after a trip through Judges. And that's pretty much where it is. Those are my words. You didn't think I could think that way, did you? But I could. Fooled you. Okay. So Ruth 1, chapter 1 opens up and lays the platform for this book. I wrote down the question, and it's probably the overriding question through the book. Can hope come out of desperation? I mean, Judges is really a book of desperation, that this cycle, will it ever stop? And the reader reads it, and it's like one thing after another, and it's like God shows them, and they disregard and go back into the folly, and they chase after the gods of the people around them, and God gets upset, and he brings oppressors in, and then they cry out, and and it's the same old stuff, and God a couple times in here, God says, you know what? You're worshiping them. Go cry to them. See if they'll bail you out. Well, there's a lesson to be learned there, isn't there? And sometimes we might do real well to heed that lesson, because sometimes we let things get between us and God, and that's a very dangerous place to be. It's called idolatry, and it comes in a lot of innocent ways and shapes and forms. It can come and challenge you in any number of ways. When it's a disregard for what God says, that's idolatry. And that should be something that we are not going to allow in our lives. So, Ruth 1:1. Came to pass in the days when the judges ruled. So this is wrapped up in this time of the judges. It's like a little parentheses of good amidst all the goings on. And remember now too, and I showed you that earlier, Judges is like regional. So it's not all happening throughout all of Israel. There are regional areas that this happens and regional oppressors. So keep that in mind. But here, this part of the book, the Bible, takes place during the time of the Judges. And it's around the area of Bethlehem, Judah. Where is Bethlehem, Judah?
South of Jerusalem.
Very good, scholar. Excellent. No, I'm not being smart. I'm not. You. Thank you. I mean that. Yeah.
West of the Jordan, about that much on my map.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Modern day. Where would we find? It's still located at the same place, but are there any notable geographic marks that we would think about? It would be the wall. The wall goes right between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. So yeah, West Bank. I would think more of the area of Samaria. That's where I would look at West Bank. But this is down by Jerusalem, so it would be still south. Hey, dear Hunter, how you doing?
Hello there.
Okay.
Continue on.
And so anyway, this would be, just think of Jerusalem and southwest, like Gary said, and it is this big wall there. Joe and I went through it. We went as far as the shepherd's field. We've been in Bethlehem, but the last time we were there, it just was not a good place to be. And there's a lot of...
Why? Why isn't it a good place to be?
Okay, because it's Palestinian.
It's Palestinian control.
Control, yeah. But there's a lot of Christians, Palestinian Christians there. And that makes it even more troubling because they are not the problem. They are really part of, they're the ones that go into Jerusalem to work and they have their passes and all of that stuff. They're proven faith, they're proven good people. So it just makes it very awkward during this time. To think that it's not a troubling area and a troubling times over there, you really aren't following the news at all. But anyway, so here's this guy, Elimelech, and he is from this area, Bethlehem, Judah. Bethlehem is the city, Judah is the area. So all of the south area is Judah, okay? So that you're aware of that. The name of the man was Elimelech. The name of his wife, Naomi. And the name of his two sons was Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. They came into the country of Moab and continued there. Now, right off the bat, there is you have to know a little bit about Israel and about Moab and what's going on here. Does that ring a bell or send a flag to anybody? They are going into the country of Moab. and continuing there. Is that a problem? Or no?
They were hostile
A lot of times
To
Moab
the
was
Israelites.
hostile. Yeah,
to the Israelites.
Yeah.
They had just come out of a period where they were trying to oppress them.
yeah. At this time, there's not so much hostility. If I were to say John chapter 4, the woman at the well, Christ must needs to go through Samaria, Sychar, what would that do? What would you think about that? And why?
He wasn't somewhere it was like normalized to be.
That normally he would be, right? Why not? Why would he not normally be there?
They were the half-breeds.
They were the half-breeds, that's right.
They had intermarried with non-Jewish,
Correct.
non-Israelite.
Correct. So they were half Jew, half whatever.
Culture.
The culture? The culture drove that, that's correct. Well, with Moab at this time, it would have been the same idea. They would have been related pretty much like the Samaritans in the New Testament. They weren't the same people, but they were definitely not of the Jews. So they were Gentile. And at this time, what was the relationship of Jew and Gentile? They were, no. The Jew was to marry the Jew. They were not to cross over and marry Gentiles. And there is no law? Well, is there a law about that today? Not necessarily with Jews, but with Christians. What do you think?
Well, yeah, none of you.
Not to be unequally yoked together. That's 2 Corinthians 7. Yeah. Be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And Christ with Belial. And goes on. God sees the problems ahead and puts a prohibition on it. Yeah.
It's interesting too because the Ephrathites, that was what Caleb's wife was from that group, so it was considered a noble family, a family that followed God close by. So here you have that group that they were from going to Moab, and it's interesting that they're staying there, so that would have affected their worship and where they could go to worship, if they could go somewhere to worship.
Okay, and there's one more thing about this. Go ahead.
Well, wasn't Moab came from Lot and his daughters?
Yeah, okay.
So, Lot and Abraham were nephew and uncle, I think. Something
Yes.
like that. So they were related, and yet they were really outcasts because of that. And didn't Moab refuse to let the Israelites come through when they were going into the wilderness?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So there's some bad blood there.
Yeah, there's some bad blood, and there's something else too. So Joshua, during the time of Joshua, what happened in the land? What's Joshua known for? Starts with a C. A conquest, very good. So there was the conquest, and when they had the land, then what did they do with it? They divided it, and they gave everyone their lots. The blessings on Israel were directly tied into the land. Now what are they going to do? And here's Elimelech taking his family out of the land and going to a place that Israel shouldn't be. And wouldn't you know, God knew what he was talking about, because the next thing that we're going to read is, and Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. She was left and her 2 sons, and they took them wives of the women of Moab. So what's the big deal? What fellowship hath light with darkness? Right? And I mean, we don't see this. Guys, don't date a girl that's lost. Or don't date a girl that says she's saved and has zero. You aren't looking at me. Why, are you too young to think about this? No, you're not. I want to brainwash you. Don't do this. Girls. Oh, but he's so cute. But I don't love him. Oh, good night.
What if they're just really nice?
Yeah, really nice. Yeah. No, yuck. Oh man, don't do it. Don't do it. There's nothing but hurt ahead. Now, I'm going to prove the exception here with Ruth. But Orpah is not the exception. Let's look a little further. So, even as these, I don't even know what I wrote here. This is terrible. I can't read my own writing. And even when I typed it, it's terrible. Even as there were those in power, here we go, who were used to face and win over the wicked society and the turning away from God, within the same society comes a picture of what God can do in spite of the wickedness of man. Well, I know what I meant. Maybe you do too. I don't know. If not, that's okay. So, in verses 1 through 7, it's all about the places, the characters, and the circumstances. So we see that they started in Bethlehem, Judah. They go down to Moab. We have Elimelech. We have Naomi. We have their two sons. And then they have, Elimelech dies, so Naomi is left a widow. Underline that in your head, because that's going to be a driving factor of some of the other things that are going to happen. Let's talk about that for a moment. So in the days of the judges, what was the lot of a widow? How did they do whatever they were doing? How did they fare? Let's start first of all.
Isn't it the brother of the husband takes him in or something like that?
Okay.
It might not be in the Judges, but I remember reading that, and
It's in the law. Okay. We will ultimately talk about the kinsman redeemer. And that's going to be Boaz. We'll get to him. He's not here yet. What standing did the widow have?
They were basically beggars.
They were basically beggars, right? They were cast. They were at the mercy of their families. And if so here's Naomi down in Moab, and we can assume the rest of the family is back in Judah, and never the twain shall meet. I mean, they're way far apart. So how can the family even care for them? Obviously, that's a rhetorical question. The answer is they can't. So here they are. Here's Naomi with her two sons and two daughters-in-law. So verse 4, they took the Moabites, the women of Moab. The name of the first was Orpah. The name of the other was Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. Now, Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her two sons and her husband. So we're talking about Naomi. So here's Naomi, a widow, and lost both of her sons. The two daughters-in-law are widows, so you have three widows standing there. That's a mess. And that just is a social mess. What do they do? And in that culture, they probably would not. They probably would be tempted to do things that were not exactly the most appropriate. So look at verse 6. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. So what's that saying? The famine was over, yeah. Yeah, we say the famine was over. That, it's a little longer to say that. So she's going to go back. Now, back to where and back to what?
Verse 7.
Back to Judah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they returned unto the land of Judah. Where do you think they returned in the land of Judah?
Family,
Pardon me?
to family.
To family, to the area of family. So then, yeah. So that would be the area of Bethlehem, because that's where her family was. Why was her family there? We already talked about it, but I want to refresh you again.
Their land inheritance.
This was the inheritance, right? This was their lot. This is what was given to them. So they're going back. As a widow, did she have any claim to the land of her husband?
Not unless her sons would have been alive. They would have gotten the inheritance via the dad. Unless she was the only daughter, then there was provision in the law. If there was
He's
only
smart.
daughters, if there were only daughters in the family,
He's got a hook.
then the man could, and they weren't married, then the father or whatever family could give it to the daughter.
I believe that they did have some rights to the land. And the reason that I'm saying that is, and I can't give you chapter and verse, but I can tell you that there was a situation where there were these daughters, and they weren't married, and they came to Moses and talked to Moses about who had the land, or can they get a lot to keep the name of their dad, to keep the family name. And that was tied into the land, okay? And it's with that in mind that I think that they had some rights to it. And matter of fact, as this unfolds, I think that you're going to see some other issues that would lend itself to that position. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. Okay, so let's move on a little bit more. So, verse 7. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on their way to return to the land of Judah. Verse 8. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. Let's talk about that verse. That's loaded with stuff. What do you think? Let's talk about Naomi. Wasn't she nice in saying to her daughters-in-law, go back home to your mama's house? I mean, hey, actually, it's going to go on. Let me just take it a little further. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. So she is looking at, wait a minute. Verse 11, and Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? That's what who was talking about that? Marrying the husband, marrying or the brother marrying the widow and bringing, retaining the name. So Naomi, what a wonderful woman she was.
Well, they were now in Israel, and no one was going to marry these women because they are foreigners.
That's number one.
So the only hope they would have had is for Naomi to have others, and she didn't. So
Right. So that's number two. They can't even claim that relationship in the law. What else? What else do you see there?
And going back to their mother, then they would have a chance to be able to marry them.
Okay, so what's involved with that? Family?
Going back
What?
to they're worshiping their God.
There you go. So she's sending it back to like the idolatrous culture of Moab. And that's the biggie in my mind. And folks, I mean, yeah.
I was going to say, but looking at it from a strictly financial or
Pragmatic.
pragmatic she'd be like, I can't take care of you, I don't even know if I'm gonna take care of myself, I can't take care of you, the best thing that, for you to even be taken care of, so you're not begging on the streets, go back to your own country, because I'm not sure they're gonna accept you in my country. But she was totally bypassing any opportunity to bring them to the God of Israel, and totally bypassing God caring for them.
Yeah, where's God in this?
Yes.
Yeah, and it was only a few verses prior to that they said that God, God was blessing Israel. God was giving, okay, we mentioned God, but go back to your idols. And this is really troubling. Now, here's what else is troubling. Let's put some application to it. Let's come up to today. What kind of statements would be similar to this in today's culture? So, I've been around parents. Who don't want to rock the boat with their kids, and they look in the outward and say, "Oh, isn't he handsome?" or "Oh, isn't she pretty?" Isn't that cute? Not even with a husband-wife relationship, but with a child and the behavior of a child. Isn't that cute? Where's God and stuff like that?
Even financially, like mom or like gals will say, "Oh, my daughter's dating this guy, he comes from a really good family. His dad's a senator, or his dad is
Power, position,
yeah,
money,
has
wealth,
this owns
whatever.
this company and that." So I'm really excited to talk about getting engaged, and she'll be taken care of, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It occurs to me that when she was living in Moab, it was tolerable for her sons to marry a Moabite woman. But now that she's back in Israel, she's turned around because that would be unacceptable. People would not allow that because she's in God's, or among God's people. It's like we act differently when we come to church than when we go out at work or school or whatever, where we're surrounded by others that are unbelievers.
Yeah.
To kind of blend in, we go along with things that we wouldn't otherwise go along with.
As I look at Naomi, I see a progression. I see one mistake that leads to another mistake, that leads to another mistake, misjudgment, miscalculation, or downright ungodliness.
I think she was just angry at God.
Oh,
I
she
mean,
was
I think,
furious.
I think that's just, like, how you can just be angry at somebody and just make a really bad decision. Sometimes you're thinking, what was I thinking? Because you were thinking in anger.
Yeah.
And I think that's right where she fell.
I believe you're right, because when she goes back and comes into the city, here's Naomi, and what does she say? Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. I'm bitter. Yeah, she was not happy. She was downright angry with God. But how did she get there? I mean, yeah.
Her husband took her to the land of Moab.
Yeah.
She could be sitting there and saying, "At least I'm going back where we never should have left in the first place."
Yeah, amen.
He takes me down to Moab, then he dies. I'm left with my two sons. Now that they died, now I have two daughter-in-laws. I'm getting back where we never should have left in the first place.
That would have been the ideal. Under those circumstances. Parents and teens, could I tell you that one bad decision ultimately is a gateway to another bad decision? Don't make the first one and you don't have to worry about the second. And this was just in downright, they discarded the knowledge that they had, and they were pragmatic. Where is God? Where's God in all of this? And when God enters in, it was only after the famine was over. But there were a whole bunch of people that stayed there and went through the famine. And is Christianity always going to be great? Huh? No. And it's like, we get so pragmatic. We can always come up for a reason to do wrong. Always. I had the teens over at our place on Monday night. The whole topic was what? Yeah? On Monday night. What are you eating paper on?
The quotes that people say to try to trick you into doing things.
Yeah, on who's for real, who's honest. Yeah, authenticity. I knew you'd know that here. Authenticity. And there's always a line to justify doing wrong. And folks, our heart deceives us into doing wrong. There's no doubt that Ruth and Elimelech didn't sit down and argue over going to Moab. They were hungry. Well, this seems to be the best way. Hey, maybe there's some food over there, And where's God? And where's God? Doesn't it say, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man? God will with the temptation provide, but God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above that you're able, but will with the temptation provide a way of escape that you may bear it. Where's God?
He never moved.
That's right. That's right. He never moved. But we do. But we do. And so I mean, woven into this story are lessons. And we would really be foolish not to try to garner some of those lessons. I have to hurry. Again. Okay, so she wants to send her daughters back, and one goes, I want to call her Orpah. That's not Orpah. Orpah. I want to put PH here. I want to make it Orpah, but it's Orpah. Orpah goes back, but Ruth doesn't. So, and this is that statement that you hear in weddings and all that stuff. So turn again, my daughters, go your way, verse 12. I'm too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if you should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. So God is the villain, she is the victim, and I'm going to throw you to the wolves because of it. This woman is not thinking right. I'm sorry. And you know what's so difficult as a pastor? Is that when we have to go and confront this nonsense, everybody gets mad. It's the truth. It's the truth. Like pastors live to be able to go and confront problems. You know that, don't you? And we go home and flail ourselves at night, till we're bloody. Because we really want pain, Like there's nothing else in life. Are you kidding me? And this is the way that we think when we are in a strait. And when we walk away from God, this is how we operate. And if there is someone kind enough to come to you, Solomon says it right. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. And you thank God when you have people that are kind enough to come to you. Don't get me started. Okay, verse 14. And they lifted up their voices and wept. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave onto her. Clave is the idea of glued to. And she said, behold, thy sister-in-law has gone back to her people, and onto her gods. I mean, it's so obvious. The woman knows this. She's walking away from Jehovah to the gods of Moab, and she's sending her there. Oh my word, this is so wrong. So, Ruth has more integrity than her mother-in-law. Verse 16, Ruth says, "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whether thou goest, I will go. Whether thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, thy God, my God." I mean, the woman has more sense than you can know. "Where thou dwellest, or where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with him, then she left speaking unto her. But I mean, here's Naomi, and I mean, the woman is so clouded, that she's willing to send Ruth to hell. I mean, that's the truth. Send her back. Let her worship the gods. Now, is there practical application here? You want to jump in?
Be careful when you're going through bad times, because it really clouds your judgment. And be careful what you say to others during that time, because you might be leading them into wrong thinking if your thinking is not clearly set of God.
Yes.
Yeah, along that same line, it grieved, in verse 13, "For it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me." She's only looking at circumstances right now. The hand of the Lord going against her as she perceived it was her circumstances. Not that God stopped loving her or caring, but that her circumstances are so bad that it grieved her for the sake of her daughters-in-law. And she didn't want them to have to deal with that because of nearness to her. I think she thought if they could just get away from me and the hand of the Lord being against me, they'd be okay. But she's only thinking about circumstances.
Yes.
She's not thinking about soul.
Yeah. And knowing, I mean, we have the whole Revelation, so we know what comes next, and we know the story. But if you think about it, I wonder, I truly wonder if this was the only way that God could get Ruth to Bethlehem, Judah, by taking the husband, the two sons, the husband, Ruth and Orpah, I'm sorry. I have it's in my head. It's just wrong. Anyway. I just wonder though, looking back at it, I wonder if this was the way that would work to get Ruth back there. Does anyone understand the importance of Ruth getting back?
She was in the line. She was Christ's great-grandmother?
Well, you have to go a few more greats, but yeah, she was David's grandmother, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, she had to get there because she was in the line of Christ. And I find this remarkable when I look at the genealogy that led of the line of Christ. Well, you have Rahab, who was a harlot from Jericho, and you have Ruth, who's a Moabitess. I mean, this is remarkable. And then what God did to orchestrate this. And we're looking at the end of the story to look at the part that we're in. But is there something that we can learn here?
God so loved the world.
Well, God so loved the world. But how about you and me? Is there something that we can learn? Something we can grab onto? Something that's so real for us? How about Romans 8:28? We know that all things Work together for good.
Then we're called according to his purpose.
Yeah, yeah. And all things could be the death of somebody. I mean, that's harsh. That's hard. But if that's what it's going to take to get someone to where they need to be to do what God wants them to do, it's not beyond God. Because guess what? We're all going to die anyway. Are you ready? You look like you're ready. Okay. Okay. Folks, don't shortchange God. Don't blame God. Don't get bitter with God when circumstances are happening. And we all do. And we all do. But don't. Because sometimes God uses it for some amazing things. I gotta get through this chapter at a time, and this is ridiculous. What's the matter with me? Okay. So they too went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass when they were come up to Bethlehem, I'm in verse 19, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, "Is this Naomi?" And she said unto them, "Call me not Naomi, call me Mara. For the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me," blaming God. "I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty." Well, the word she should have concentrated on is "brought me home," not empty. She missed it. She missed it. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. And that's where we'll leave it tonight. I want to get through chapter 1. But, yeah.
Well, it is true, though. The Lord took her out when she was full,
Yes,
and he brought her back empty.
that's true.
So she was really just stating the facts.
She just was stating the facts, but she was clearly stating the facts through her lens.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. And,
It was true.
yeah.
Kind of interesting, though, ironic, because she thought she was empty in Israel of food, and she's trying to become full.
Yeah.
Think that, her lot's going to be better over there, and then she comes back legitimately empty. Interesting.
Which positions her to get full.
Right.
Yeah.
It was her husband.
Yeah.
He was empty and needed food.
Yeah.
He's the one who.
Well, and what's interesting is God had to get her to the point of being empty, and so many times when we think things are going so bad for us, God really wants us in that bad situation and for things. I mean, He is putting us through a time of trial, and I just feel like so many times we miss that time to draw close to God because we are so focused on what we don't have or what went wrong or all these things, and I just feel so bad and this is terrible, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and we're so focused on that we're missing that maybe God wants us to get to the end of our rope and stay where we are and call on Him and work through it so that He can fill us again, even
Sometimes
maybe
that's the
with
only
better
thing that can
things.
get our attention.
Yeah.
There was a song that we used to sing when we were in Bible college. We would always go to, Counterman, Minnesota. We'd go up to the cities at night. We would go on extension to churches and that. We would all gather together at Fourth Baptist Church from all over the city. They had a huge amount of college kids for Singspiration every Sunday night. And there was a song they used to sing. "One by one He took them from me, all the things I valued most. Until I was empty-handed, every glittering toy was lost. Then at last I comprehended, with my stupid mind and dull, that God could not pour His riches into hands already full." Is that rich?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not good in memory, but I remember that one, I'll tell you what. It's so true. We work to put coins, like it says, I believe it's in Haggai, to put coins in the pockets that have holes in them. Yeah, there's a lot that we can learn from Ruth. Okay, I'll take your prayer requests and try to shut that off, and I'll just have a couple of you pray tonight. I'm so sorry, I went long, but